Okay, perfect, Erin. So thank you so much for your time. I read about this short, Luciela, and the story behind it. I would like you to explain to the audience about this story and how do you get to the inspiration to this story. I know it has something to do with part of your life and a travel to Los Angeles. So I would like you to introduce us, please.
So I live here in Los Angeles. I've lived here for about 20 years, and fireworks are a huge part of the culture here in Los Angeles. And I've seen many, many fireworks displays, but there was this one year that I went to watch the fireworks on the 4th of July at a friend's house in Lincoln Heights, which is a neighborhood in Los Angeles that is predominantly immigrant and Latinx. And it just felt especially moving to me to see so many fireworks on the 4th of July in this neighborhood in particular. It was shortly after Trump had been elected, and it felt like a scary time for that community in particular. Xenophobia was on the rise. There was a lot of hate crimes. There was a lot of uncertainty. And there was something just so bold about setting off all these really loud fireworks and literally taking over the skies of Los Angeles that I was just really, I was really moved by. Los Angeles, like when the 4th of July happens, like the skies are filled with fireworks, amateur fireworks, thousands of amateur fireworks. They're loud, they're big, they're impossible to escape. And we were up in the hills in Lincoln Heights, and we just had this view of them. And I was like, this is cinematic. This is spectacular. And somebody needs to make a film about this. And partly just to document the beauty of them, but also just to kind of capture that, how poignant it was to be setting off fireworks in such this big dramatic display on the 4th of July in an immigrant Latinx community.
Totally. And also, I know that this was, as you explained to us, this was while Trump era, while Trump was president. Do you feel that that the short is still relevant to this time? How do you think these kind of stories of Latin people getting deported, how do you think this affects to our community?
It's sadly very relevant still. I mean, people are still getting deported, and there's still a lot of very sad separations that are happening, family separations that are happening, and things have not been resolved. And I think there's still a lot of fear and uncertainty, some hope, but it's by no means by no means out of the woods. And so yeah, I think, and and you mix into that the fact that we have a global pandemic going on, so people are experiencing loss related to that. Families have been separated, family members have gotten sick, have died. So there's just a lot that this community in particular is grappling with. And I think a film that explores loss of a loved one on a day that's supposed to be happy and joyous, and how do you deal with that that contradiction, I think is very timely and will speak to people. Oh, I think you're muted.
Yeah, sorry, I didn't realize. So there is a part in the movie where Luciela speaks like, "Oh, deported means this," right? And it's like a huge part of the film. I would like to ask you, what does deported means to you, and how do you experience this now that you live in Los Angeles, noting that this was like a Mexican territory many, many, many years ago? How do you have this feeling? Do you have a certain impression of immigrants specifically in California?
Yes. So, I mean, there's a lot to talk about around this issue. Obviously, this land was Mexican land, and before that, it was Spanish land. Before that, it was indigenous land. So, who this land belongs to is obviously a contentious issue, and the fact that Mexican Americans or Mexicans or Latinx people are being deported from a land that their ancestors lived in and owned and belonged to is tragic. And I think it's really, it's a terrible situation, and my heart goes out to the people who've had to deal with this injustice.
Thank you. Just give me 1 second because there's a lot of traffic next to my house, so I don't want the noise to get into the call.
Okay. I can't hear it, just so you know.
Oh, okay. Thank you. And also, as the director, editor, and almost, I think, producer too, if I'm right, and the producer of Luciela, how do you identify one of the producers, right?
Yeah, so Charis Delgadillo is also another producer.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you for clarifying that. How do you identify with this main character of Luciela, this little kid that has an immigrant father? Do you identify with some aspects of Luciela?
Yes, I grew up with an immigrant father. My stepfather, since I was a baby, who has raised me since I was a baby, is Cuban. He's an immigrant from Cuba, and so I can somewhat relate to that story, you know, to a certain degree. But I also mostly related to Luciela in terms of her being very fierce and independent and wanting to express herself. I certainly grappled with that growing up, and I've channeled that energy into being a director and getting to boss people around. And I certainly, I love to see that spark of independence in young girls, and I love to tell their stories. So that was part of the inspiration for this film.
Totally. Thank you so much. And almost to finish, I would like you to invite people and tell them why do they need to watch Luciela and how do they can watch it and until which date?
So I encourage everyone to watch this film who is interested in seeing a story that is about resilience and joy and the immigrant experience, but from a slightly different lens, you know, through the lens of celebrating the 4th of July and all that the complications that holiday represents. And you can watch it on pbs.org, and it is available until July 23rd.
Perfect. And also, is there another message or important thing that you would like to add to this interview?
I know that there are some people who have complicated feelings about fireworks. And I know that there are people who, you know, veterans and people who are dog owners, and there are people who, for whatever reason, have very valid complaints about fireworks. Mm-hmm. But I think that for this one moment that the film captures, it's really about seeing that it's precisely their loudness and the fact that they disrupt things that the film is capturing. It's about disrupting the status quo, taking over the skies, being loud, being visible, being heard, and kind of just like turning things upside down, which obviously in the real world can be hard for people who have to deal with the noise and the inconvenience. But in the film, it really is symbolic of, you know, pushing back against the status quo and finding joy in the beauty in that moment of rebellion.
Oh, perfect. And how long is going to be the movie available for the users?
I believe it's available until July 23rd.
Oh, okay, perfect. Okay, well, thank you so much, Erin. I don't have more questions, more doubts. I think it's all clarified. I also read all the interview that you did with PBS that I think it's really complete about how do you approach to this history of the time you have living in Los Angeles. So I really, really appreciate the time for you talking to us.